Podcasting is networking. Café and Networking Podcast promotes entrepreneurs, startups, authors, business experts throughout the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people and speaking from my studio in Vinhedo, São Paulo, Brazil. And today we talk with Jas Rawlinson, and she's joining us from Brisbane in Australia. Jas Rawlinson is a ghostwriter, book coach, resilient speaker, and best-selling author who specializes in empowering entrepreneurs and everyday people to use the power of storytelling to transform lives. As a young girl, would often disappear into the world of writing to escape from family violence. Also made a promise to one day find a way to support other survivors and victims of domestic violence. So, Jas, if you could share one message of hope with someone who is struggling with their mental health, what would you share?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on today, Tom. The first thing I would say is if you find yourself in that really low position, that really struggling with your mental health, it's firstly really important to understand that you're not alone. I've been in these places myself many times throughout my life as a trauma survivor, and I know that it can be really isolating when you are in those low places. So it's firstly really important to understand that you're not alone, that there are many people out there who would love to support you and be there for you. And beyond that, I think it's also really important to understand that wherever you are in your journey right now is not necessarily where you have to stay.
Right.
So once again, it's like very easy to feel that this is just how I'm going to feel forever. And I'm never, ever going to be able to see anything beyond this or experience a life free of this pain. But I truly believe that it's really important for people to understand that they can live free from their trauma, or that they can live with that trauma and still thrive. So that's the main thing I want to share.
And I think that's it. And what you said, I think, is true. We tend to be prisoners in our own life, and we do need that help. And it's hard to do alone. I can understand that. And many times we're in that position, and we're really afraid to even raise our voice because that could generate even more violence.
Absolutely. Yep. And on that as well, something that is probably important to say is that if you're in a situation where it isn't safe to raise your voice, that's why it's even more important to find someone that you can trust and reach out to them. And that may be, a doctor or a psychologist, or it may be a friend or a family member. Or if you don't have anyone in your, sort of personal day-to-day life that you can reach out to, I'm very big on encouraging people to reach out to, even if it's someone in your business network that you've met online,
right,
but someone who you really feel you can trust. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that you find someone you can trust and you reach out to that person and you say, I'm not doing okay, I need help, or I need to talk to someone. It's about taking that first step.
And many times, and here in Brazil too, we're speaking to you in Australia. Brazil is unfortunately also a country where domestic violence is prevalent. Women do suffer. It's a macho country. But there are systems in place here. And even within condominiums in neighborhoods now, signs up asking the people who live in residential buildings that we are responsible. So if we hear or see anything, it's part of our obligation. I think that's the other side.
Oh, I love that.
Many times we see something or hear something happening, and we feel, well, we shouldn't do anything. It's not our place. But here more and more, it is your place. Because unfortunately, what we've seen here, generally with women, that violence turns into death. So if you don't stop it somewhere, it doesn't get better, unfortunately, by itself. It gets worse.
No, I'm so glad, though, that you brought that up, because just in the last week or so, I've really been speaking about the importance of understanding the bystander effect and choosing not to be a bystander in situations where you witness domestic violence or you have suspicions that there's domestic violence. And the reason I was educating my community on this over the last week was because I witnessed an experience of domestic violence in the city last week.
Right.
And unfortunately, I was the only, I'm a 5'2", very slim woman. And I was unfortunately the only person who was willing to confront this violent man who was very scary and very tall. And not a single person around me offered to help or, even looked my way. Everyone was uncomfortable. Everyone looked away. And I was really uncomfortable too. I did consider just walking on and going to my car and heading home because I felt scared when I witnessed that. But at the same time, I thought, as someone who grew up with family violence, with a verbally and mentally abusive father, I just went, I can't walk by and leave this woman in this situation and not do anything. And I did end up actually calling the police because of what ended up escalating from there. And so I love that you have those signs in your country and that you yourself are aware of the importance of speaking up and that we're all responsible for looking out for each other. One very quick thing I'd say is that, it's easy to feel, it's very normal to feel scared in these situations. And it's very normal to think, I don't know, I might be making more of this than it actually is. I should just keep to myself. But I often say, if there's no harm in being wrong, if you call the police, just report what you've heard or what you've seen or what you suspect. If it turns out to be nothing, great, absolutely fine. But it's so much worse if we suspect something, do nothing, and it leads to extreme harm or even the death of that person.
And there, to that point, so being wrong, I would rather be wrong on the side of maybe that I saw it differently than being wrong on the side of seeing somebody die and not having done anything, which most people, they sort of stand back when they see violence or hear it. They really don't want to take part. Part of that is I can understand the physicality, but many times just saying words in a correct way, using communication with the big brunt can draw their attention. Sometimes they need for someone just to ring a bell, and that can help. I've seen that happen. And so that's part of it. And training too, that what you do as a speaker is fantastic. We need to learn to do that. And as a population, most of it, we haven't learned. We've learned to turn the other cheek, sort of thing, and
keep to ourselves. Not stray out of our comfort zone, not get involved. It is very difficult in our society today to not be a bystander, but it's incredibly important because if we were ever in that situation, I'm sure we would want someone to step in for us. So I just think do whatever you can. You don't have to put yourself in a dangerous situation. It can be as simple as calling the police, which is what I ended up doing that day last week. I did also, like you were saying, create a lot of noise because I felt in that moment all I could do was basically use my voice to make it really clear what was happening. So I started to yell, stay away from her, over and over, which probably people around just went, what is this crazy lady doing?
Well, it's not crazy. Most people, it's the fact people don't know how to react to that. And what you do, you just by screaming, you're ringing everyone's bell.
And that's what I was hoping. And I thought if I can do that, bring some attention that way, if there's someone else who can help in this situation, then that's great. But I also called the police and I left it to them to deal with because that was as much as I could do. But it's so important for us to be aware of that bystander effect and actively go, choose not to go that direction and do whatever we can.
Well, to the side of writing books and being a book coach, you also help persons, and I see specifically women, to transform their life story into a book and change their lives. So I want to commend you on that as well.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Well, Jas, we're coming to the end of our time. I want to thank you for sharing. Congratulations on what you do, and hope to have you back here to speak a little bit more, okay?
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on.
And for our listeners, where can they find you, Jas?
If you want to know more about my ghostwriting or book coaching programs, or you're interested in my work as a domestic violence and resilience speaker, you can find out more at jasrawlinson.com.
Very good. That's Jas Rawlinson. That's Jas. The last name is Rawlinson. You can also find her on LinkedIn or the site jasrawlinson.com. And there, too, you'll find more about her signature program, Write Like a Pro, or other ghostwriting services. Café and Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information on their website, www.focusmi.com. Thanks for listening. Until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.